Thank you so much, sir. So I officially welcome back
Mhm.
everyone in the post
Yeah,
lunch
yeah.
session. Welcome, Joydeep, sir. It's good to
Thank you.
have you in our second session. Welcome back to everybody. Before we resume with our sessions, it is just a friendly reminder regarding attendance. Please make sure that you join each and every session on time and have your cameras turned on just during the beginning of the session for attendance. Remember, you have to have full 100% attendance criteria to receive the e-certificates, which will be provided to the participants who have scored more than 60% on the MCQ test scheduled on the last day of this FTP. So thank you so much, and let's get started with the next session and our next speaker. It is my immense pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Joydeep Datta. Dr. Datta is a professor and academic coordinator at Pillai HOC College of Architecture, Mumbai University. He holds a bachelor's degree in architecture from IIT Kharagpur and a master's degree in urban planning from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and further a PhD from IIT Kharagpur. With over 30 years of hands on experience in architecture, urban planning, and building construction, Dr. Datta brings a unique combination of corporate, administrative, and academic research experience. He has served as an assistant professor at IIT Kharagpur and chief architect at MS Bhattacharya and Associate, Kolkata. He has also held a corporate leadership positions in design, project management, techno-commercial at organizations such as Reliance, Taj Group of Hotels. He has an excellent communication and interpersonal skills and has been mentoring, consulting in architecture and planning since 2012. Today, Dr. Datta's presentation will focus on identifying the research gaps in architecture and planning domain. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Datta on board. Welcome, sir. Welcome again.
Okay. Thank you so much for the kind words. Okay, you can see my screen, I'm sure, and you can hear me, I hope.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay. It's nice to have lots of fun people here. Um, Thank you for the kind invitation and the nice introduction. There's just one little thing I'd like to say, uh, that I'm very pedantic. I keep changing colors. I'm not with the University of Mumbai, but I'm adjunct professor with FOAP at AITU Lucknow, and also visiting faculty at Amity University, Kolkata. I'm glad to see a lot of young colleagues of mine, some students and some colleagues and cohorts. Um, I was happy to see Hari Mohan after a long time. He's been my senior colleague, and we come from the same stable of research. Okay, we were Guru Bhais, as we call it, because he and I, though he's much senior to me, we did our PhD alongside at the same time at IIT Kharagpur, the tutelage of Dr. Uttam Banerjee. And I am very glad to know that he has already shared with you his own research. Yeah, his PhD research is what he talked about, is what I understand. So there could have been nothing better than that. His was essentially an architectural research problem. Mine was a planning research problem. Of course, there is much connect between the two because we are talking about trying to enhance your research capabilities both in architecture and planning. Now that is a interesting sweep, or that is a it's an interesting combo. It's not that these two are strange bedfellows, but the fact of the matter is some of their techniques and methods are different. Where they are common, essentially, is that they are both social sciences. They are trying to understand and deal with people, okay, who do activities in settings, okay, or places, okay. And when people do these activities, there are phenomena that happen, trying to understand, trying to document, trying to analyze, and finally sometimes trying to intervene and suggest, okay, solutions is what is common to these two interesting broad fields. Okay, so we'll start with that, and I have actually gone through whatever Hari Mohan has shared with you. So mine will of course not be so graphic. It'll be more verbose, lots of words, but we'll try to keep it as simple as possible. And we are now talking about the first phase of the research. He showed you a cyclical diagram, if you remember. You observe something, then you decide to do some work on some area, and then you formulate the research problem. Then you design the research design per se. Okay, then you collect data, or you do an experiment, or both, and then you analyze, and then finally you evaluate. And sometimes, okay, this is not a very smooth process. Sometimes you might have to redo, rethink, rephrase, rescope your thesis. I won't call it a thesis, because a researcher is writing a paper or a dissertation or a PhD thesis or postdoctoral work or much have you, and it is definitely collaborative. But there are places when you have to rethink, reprocess, and rephrase your research. That is why we essentially say that it's cyclical, that you can, okay, make amendments and iterate the entire process. So we will focus on the first part, which I don't know why the screen is not being shared anymore. Wait, let me share the screen back again. It says you're not allowed to share screen.
Host, you have to give the permission to do that.
No, but I was being allowed.
Tanima, you have.
So this is
Yes, sir.
example of
No,
how you started off thinking something, and then situations change, and you have to re-engineer, okay, your thought process and everything that you do. So you have to be flexible and reliable. Okay, I will.
So now
again,
I think you'll be able to share.
Yes, I've been allowed. Great. Right. So without further ado, we'll go ahead with this. What is research? Most of you are faculty members, albeit young, but you know what it is, so we don't have to spoon feed you on this. But the essential broad ideas and the broad parameters which must be ticked off is what we'll talk about. So after a particular author, we're trying to say that research is a structured inquiry. The word structured is key. Inquiry, as opposed to an enquiry with an E. An enquiry is what you do at the railway station. When will the train start or something? General information asking. Inquiry is something more specific, more structured, and sometimes often very legal in that process. So inquiry, not enquiry. So it's a structured inquiry that utilizes acceptable scientific methodology. That is something that we'll harp on a bit. What is scientific or logical, if you want to call it more generically? Two, to solve problems or to explain phenomena that creates new knowledge. New is the key. New knowledge. Okay? It need not be a grand discovery. It can be a small iota of knowledge which is new, unique, and seminal to you and your research, which you have contributed to the large body of knowledge that is already there. So you create new knowledge that is generally applicable. Generally, okay? Almost on the verge of universally, not universally, but generally applicable, not specifically, okay? So something that can be extended, okay, to a more general explanation, so that it just does not answer one specific question, but it also paves the way for how similar questions can be attacked. So this is after Grinnell, okay? What is research? You search and you search and you search again, you iterate, so you repeat the search. You repeat the search, so it's research. And more than anything else, needless to say, it's more than a skill. It is actually a way of thinking. And I am glad that Hari Mohan has already touched upon the idea of ontology and epistemology. Ontology is that branch of philosophy of knowledge which says what to find out, what. And epistemology is how to find out, okay, what we want to find out. So that part taken care of. So it is the epistemological part of it, the way of thinking, the process, the method, which we'll try to make structured, scientific, new or unique in some way, and generally applicable. What is expected out of good research? You are trying to find out answers to a question that such research process being employed is being undertaken within a framework of a set of philosophies or rules or what have you. So it is within a framework, okay? It is not imaginary necessarily. It's not, we're not saying that you cannot imagine about research. If Copernicus did not imagine a model which was not geocentric but heliocentric, in the center and we moving around, he had, in fact, he had lots of knowledge which was already there, which was established knowledge, authoritarian knowledge, that people believe in this belief system. But he had, he with Galileo and other people, I mean, they made or they created instruments like telescopes to figure out or observe certain phenomena without ever seeing it, just conceiving it. He was able to come up with new knowledge. That's an extreme example, okay? But a similar example of great stature is the fact that we all know things fall down. We all know things fall down, okay? If you throw it up, it'll fall down. But not everyone questioned why. So explanations, explorations are required out of research. But you have to do it within a framework of philosophies or rules. And the process that you do should use procedures, methods, and techniques that are scientific. Okay? In plain terms, some methods which have been tested for validity and reliability. Okay? You know broadly what these words mean, but there are statistical significances to these words, and I'm sure in the 5 days that you will be exposed to this, unless you already know, you will be reinforced of the idea of what is validity of a method, what is reliability of a method, what is replicability of a method, what is falsifiability, and all of that. We'll touch upon it when we talk about the scientific method. We will have special professor from University of Amsterdam talk to us. You had a snapshot of her, 2 small video clips. So going back, research process should be within a framework. The methods and the procedures should be scientific or logical, and it should be designed to be unbiased and objective. Okay, we take a look at these words. So what's the difference between scientific method and non-scientific method? Or if I extend the question, what is the difference between a scientific attitude or temper versus a non-scientific attitude or temper? Now, Tonima will take over because we'll watch these 2 small video clips. They are worth a total of maybe 7 to 8 minutes, but they are very important and they are very well done. So I would stop sharing screen and ask, okay, Tonima to play the first 2 clips. I'll be here, pay attention to it, and then we'll come back and take it from there. I'm sure you can hear me, Tonima. Great.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
To see why we need the scientific method, let's take a look at what people base their knowledge on in day-to-day life. People can accept something as true based on intuition or belief. Let's consider my own strong belief that my cat, Misha, loves me most of all people in his life. I just know he loves me more than anyone else. I feel this in my heart of hearts. Now, is such a belief a good basis for knowledge? Well, no. Simply believing something doesn't make it so. Things we believe in strongly can turn out to be false. Also, what if someone else holds an opposing belief? What if my fiance believes that Misha loves him more? There's no way to settle who is right just by pitting our beliefs against each other. We could count the number of supporters for each belief and require a majority or a consensus. But this isn't a very solid basis for knowledge either. Just because most people accept something as true doesn't mean it is true. For centuries, practically everybody thought the Earth was flat. Turns out they were wrong. It's round. Another source of knowledge is an authority's opinion. Also not a very good source. The opinion of authority figures like political leaders, experts, scientists is just that, an opinion. Authorities may have access to more or better knowledge, but they also have an important personal stake in getting their views accepted. Their careers and reputations depend on it. Suppose my fiance gets a so-called cat whisperer to declare that Misha loves him more. Of course, I'm going to be skeptical about this expert opinion, especially if my fiance paid for it. I could find my own cat expert to oppose my fiance's cat whisperer, but then we would just have two opposing opinions again. What we need is evidence. So how do we use evidence to settle the argument of who Misha loves more? Well, suppose I regularly observe that after getting home from work, Misha always comes to sit on my lap and not my fiance's. I'm supporting my statement about the world, that Misha loves me more, with an observation of the world, namely on whose lap he sits after work. This gathering of evidence through casual observation is a better foundation of knowledge than the previous ones, but it's still not good enough. This is because people just aren't very good at observing. We tend to selectively observe and remember things that agree with our beliefs. For example, I might have forgotten, very conveniently, that Misha always sits on my fiance's lap at breakfast. There are many biases besides selective perception that make casual observation a tricky source of knowledge. And the same goes for our ability to use logic. Logical reasoning would seem like a solid basis for knowledge, but our informal logical reasoning isn't always consistent. There's an almost endless list of fallacies or logical inconsistencies that people regularly make in their day-to-day reasoning. If we want to develop accurate knowledge, make sure that our explanations of the world are valid, then we need something more. We cannot depend on subjective and unverifiable sources like beliefs, opinions, consensus. We can't trust casual observation and informal logic because they can be heavily distorted by our beliefs. We need systematic observation, free from any bias, combined with consistently applied logic. In other words, we need the scientific method.
We can go to the next slide, the next video, I mean.
Is it audible?
We need the scientific
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
please. Yes.
method to make sure our attempts to explain how the world works result in valid knowledge. Opinions, beliefs, casual observation, and informal logic won't do. They're too subjective and too susceptible to error. The scientific method is based on systematic observation and consistent logic. Applying the scientific method increases our chances of coming up with valid explanations. It also provides a way to evaluate the plausibility of our scientific claims or hypotheses, and the strength of the empirical evidence that we provide for these hypotheses in our empirical study or research. The scientific method can be described according to 6 principles. If our study meets these principles, then it can be considered scientific. Our hypothesis can then be compared to and compete with other scientific claims to provide the best possible explanation of the world around us. The first principle requires that a hypothesis is empirically testable. This means that it should be possible to collect empirical or physical evidence or observations that will either support or contradict the hypothesis. Suppose I hypothesize that my cat loves me more than he loves my fiance. To test this hypothesis empirically, we need to collect observations or data. But how can we observe how much the cat loves us? We can't ask the cat about his feelings. Suppose we both agree that a cat is unable to express love the way humans do. Well, then there's nothing to observe. The hypothesis is not empirically testable. The second principle is replicability. A study and its findings should be replicable, meaning we should be able to consistently repeat the original study. If the expected result occurs only once, or in very few cases, then the result could just have been coincidental. A hypothesis is more plausible if it's repeatedly confirmed. And this requires that it's possible to repeat or replicate a study. Let's say I've convinced my fiance that if the cat loves someone more, the cat will spend more time on their lap. Now suppose I observed that this week the cat sat on my lap twice as long as on my fiance's lap. Does that mean my hypothesis can be accepted? Does the cat love me more? Well, the hypothesis would be considered plausible if we can show that the result is the same in the following weeks. But what if the cat dies after the first week of observation? Then we would not be able to check the hypothesis for ourselves. The study is no longer replicable. To see if results replicate, we have to be able to repeat the study as it was originally conducted. Suppose we do something differently and we find different results. Is this a failure to replicate? No, the failed replication could be caused by our change in procedure. The third principle of objectivity aims to allow others to repeat the study by themselves without need for the original researcher. Objective literally means that it shouldn't matter who is performing the study. Anybody should be able to get the same results based on the description of the assumptions and the procedures. A researcher should therefore be as objective as possible about assumptions, concepts, procedures. This means that all these elements should be clearly and explicitly defined, leaving no room for subjective interpretation. Suppose I count my cat's face rubbing as an expression of love, but I fail to explicitly tell my fiance about this. Then my procedure for measuring love is subjective. Even if we systematically observe the cat at the same time, the result will depend on who is observing him. I will conclude the cat shows love more often than my fiance will. In this example, the results are subjective and therefore incomparable, and we might not even be aware of it. If we do not explicitly discuss and agree on what counts as love and what doesn't, then our measurement procedure for cat love is not objectively defined. The fourth principle is transparency. Being transparent is closely related to being objective. In science, anyone should be able to replicate your results for themselves, your supporters, but also your critics. This means that researchers need to publicly share what assumptions were made, how concepts are defined, what procedures were used, and any other information that's relevant for accurate replication. The fifth principle states that a hypothesis should be falsifiable. Falsifiability is a very important principle. A hypothesis is falsifiable if we're able to at least imagine finding observations that will contradict our hypothesis. If we can't imagine what such contradictory data would look like, well, then the hypothesis cannot be disproven. Ask any person with a very strong, for example, religious belief, what evidence would convince them that their belief is false? No matter what contradictory evidence you propose, they will probably argue that these facts do not contradict their strong belief. This puts statements based purely on belief, such as religion, outside the domain of science. If there is no form of evidence that will be accepted as disproving a hypothesis, then it's pointless to argue about the hypothesis or to even look for confirmation, since the conclusion is already drawn. Okay, let's move on to the sixth and last principle of logical consistency. A hypothesis should be logically consistent or coherent. This means there shouldn't be any internal contradiction. For example, if a supporting assumption disagrees with the hypothesis. The conclusions based on our observations should also be logically consistent. This means, among other things, that researchers should be consistent in what they count as confirmatory and contradictory evidence. Let me explain this using our cat example. I hypothesize that my cat loves me more, and so I expect him to sit on my lap longer. But what if he spends more time on my fiance's lap? I could say that the cat can feel that sitting on my lap is uncomfortable for me. So the cat will sit on my lap less often because he loves me more. Of course, this is logically inconsistent. I've changed the interpretation of the results after the data are in to suit my hypothesis. Incidentally, this also makes my hypothesis unfalsifiable. I will always conclude that my cat loves me, whether he sits on my lap often or not at all. So to summarize, the scientific method requires that we formulate hypotheses that are empirically testable, meaning the hypothesis can be supported or contradicted by observations. Replicable, meaning the hypothesis can be tested repeatedly. Objective, meaning the hypothesis can be tested independently by others. Transparent, meaning the hypothesis and results are publicly shared so they can be tested by anyone. Falsifiable, meaning that finding contradictory evidence is a possibility. And finally, logically consistent, meaning that the hypothesis is internally consistent and the conclusions to support or reject the hypothesis based on the observations is logically sound. One final point. The scientific method is only effective when it's used with the right attitude. In order to come up with better hypotheses, researchers need to be critical of their own studies and those of others. This means they have to be open and transparent. They have to accept critique and let go of their pet hypotheses if others provide better explanations. Only then can science function like an evolutionary system, where only the fittest or most plausible hypotheses survive.
So thank you, Tonema, and thank you to Professor Annemarie Schulz from the University of Amsterdam through her MOOC video in trying to explain a very important idea of this scientific attitude in about less than 8 or 9 minutes. So then I continue with what I have as my presentation. Now that I presuppose that you understand what we mean by logical consistency, it should be easier for us to get there. So, what are the types of research that we can do? Remember, this session is about the first phase, where we are trying to find out what the hell is it that we are going to find out. Has it been found out by somebody else already? Are we going to look at a differentiated aspect of something that is already done, or what have you? So we need to know what are the types of research from the point of view of what is the application of the research. Now, anything can be classified based on certain norms. So types of research can be classified by the way that it is applied. It can be classified with what is the objective or what is the main goal or aim of the research. And it can be categorized as or by the way in which we find out, the inquiry mode. With application, it could be pure research, which is essentially theoretical, or it can be applied research. What is the objective of your research? What is it that you are trying to find out? Well, the research can be descriptive, exploratory, correlational, and experimental. They are largely self-explanatory words. Descriptive, you're describing a phenomena or something that is happening. In our architectural research, Okay, taking photographs, doing sketches is also a description. It's a visual or a vivid description. You're looking at something and then you're trying to find out why it is happening. So you're trying to explore into the reasons of it. You're trying to explain things. That is another kind of research. You're observing two types of phenomena and you are hypothesizing that maybe there is a correlation between the two. So you try to find out a correlation, that is correlational analysis or research. And finally, experimental research. Experimental research is when you try to simulate something, okay, in some way or the other, which will kind of replicate what is happening in real life or something that you want to find out. Okay, there might be other sub varieties or sub classification of these, but broadly, these are the aims or objectives that research strategies essentially have. And the final one is, what is the inquiry mode? Okay, are we finding it qualitatively or quantitative? Somewhere down the line, unless you already know, you would know that there is a basic difference in the way qualitative and quantitative analysis or research is conceived and in the way that it is actually conducted. We'll not get into that because our idea is essentially to try to find out where to start. What is it? The more ontological part of it, and choosing an ontology which will be backed up or can be backed up by good methods or the epistemology of what we want to find out. So let's say those were the types of researches and all of that. We've made a beautiful tree, but which type of research to choose? That's the obvious next question. Is it any one of them? Can it be a combination of that? Well, yes. The classification of these types of research is not mutually exclusive. Okay? They are not mutually exclusive. It's not that an experimental research cannot try to find out correlation. It is not that if you are describing something, you cannot be explanatory or exploratory at the same time. It is not such that if you are trying to about a qualitative phenomena, you can't bring it into a quantitative setting to test some hypotheses, and then finally when you analyze and you infer at the end, you again make it qualitative. So all of this, I won't say fuzzy, but I mean they are not mutually exclusive. You should not lock yourself solely into one category. You should rather be pragmatic and use a combination of types based on the strengths and weaknesses of each type and how well they suit your case. Your case as in, what is it that you want to find out? What is the broad field of study? And to suit your case also means, what is it that you can do and you cannot do? Many a time a supervisor would start off with a scholar saying, which way are you bent? Are you more qualitative? Are you more quantitative? Which is your strength? Which is your weakness? And try to work on it based on that. So the choice of the type of research that you do will depend on, just to recap, the application, whether it's pure theoretical research or applied research, the objective of the study or the inquiry. Are you exploring something? Are you trying to confirm something? Are you trying to count or measure something? Are you trying to assess something? And the mode of inquiry. How are you finding out? And what are the uses of your findings? Did you set out to understand the process? Or are you trying to create an assessment index? Or are you eventually trying to formulate a policy? So whichever is the one that you think best suits your work is what you should choose. Now, we'll talk about the research journey. Not much different than what maybe you know and what maybe Hari Mohan has already talked about in the first session. But, and these are the simple analogies which make sense to you. Okay. So let's say they have three phases: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 and 2 can be merged, but I have extracted out phase one because we'll be talking only about phase one. Phase one is deciding what research questions to answer. Yeah, make that clear. This is what we will really concentrate about in this session. Phase two, we'll just run through this quickly. Phase two is planning on how to gather the evidence to answer the research questions we have. And phase three is conducting, where you collect, where you measure the required information that you set out to find, right? So essentially, phase one precedes phase two precedes phase three. No question about that. But is it essentially a linear process? No, it is rather better imagined as a cyclic process, as may have already been discussed with you. So if we break down these three phases, first one, deciding what to research. Step one is formulating the research problem. So while this session has been named and called Finding the Research Gap, I have reformulated that topic and called it Formulating the Research Problem. Yeah. Phase two is planning the research study. You will get into it from tomorrow and the day after, where step two will be trying to conceptualize the research design. How is it that I'll go by it? Step three, where you will be trying to construct an instrument for data collection, whether it's a questionnaire or whether it is a structured interview or a video that you will do or what have you. You are trying to create or construct the instrument for data collection. Step four then will be selecting. We'll get there. That is more about quantitative research. And I understand it is in the third class or third day that you will talk about sample design. Step five is to write a research proposal, not the research paper. Write a research proposal, which means that in a way you're either formulating an abstract or something, or showing the intent of what you want to do and how. Okay, so often in a real life situation, you have to write a research proposal. You have to look ahead in time to see what the end game is and be able to predict and say that this is what we want to confirm or reconfirm. This is what we want to validate, okay, based on our research. Okay, so that is setting up the question. And then you start to answer the question in phase three, which is when you conduct the research study. Your step six is you collect data, or we can say that your step two can also be setting up the experiment. Your step seven is to process the data or analyze the data if you want it, and to display the data. It may be quantitative, it may be qualitative. Okay, I'm still not making the distinction at this stage of your FDP. And your step eight is finally to write the research report. That report may be your PhD thesis, it may be postdoctoral work, it may be a research paper, it may be a combined assignment that you're doing, but at the end of the day, that is the cherry, okay, which is the proof of the pudding. Yeah. So phase one comes before phase two. Phase two comes before phase three. We've seen this, but this seems to be a linear process, and we do understand that actually it is not a linear process in real life research. Okay, what if we go wrong? Like I said, we went wrong somewhere. What if the final outcome is not as satisfactory as we expected it to be? Is that the end of the world? No, we can go back, we can iterate and go back into any one of the stages where we thought we might have gone wrong. Okay, it may thus be better to see it as a cyclical process. Okay, now phase one, formulating the research problem. This is the first and the most important step. This should be shaped by your expertise in research methodology. Now we are trying to get into the nitty-gritty of how, okay? It's not that I'm a great researcher, but I've been there and I've done that at least once, okay, in detail for my doctoral work. So these are the learnings that we've had, okay? Also based on whatever other authors had to say, we are trying to say that when you're at the first phase of your journey, when you're trying to formulate your research problem, that should be shaped by what are the considerations? That should be shaped by your expertise in research methodology. Okay, if you're not good in GIS, maybe you should not go the mapping way. Okay, if you get scared looking at algebraic expressions, maybe you should not go the quantitative correlational statistical way. Okay, whereas if you're good at drawing, sketching, if that is what excites you and you want to document things, that is what you should go for. So it is based on your leanings, your expertise. Not to say that whatever we know now is what it is and we will not increase our knowledge, we will not learn new things. I'm not saying that. Of course, it is your time to improve your skill set and to improve specific task skills, okay, which you might need for your research. But it always helps to know what I cannot do or what I don't want to do. Okay, maybe that is a good starting point. So this is what we positively in the positive way is saying, based on your expertise on the research method, based on your knowledge of the subject area. It may be that I'm superbly interested in it, but I haven't studied. Well, we're not saying you cannot do research there, but you have to go through a lot of literature before you actually try to even think of finding the research gap, if you were. Then this stage should also be shaped by your understanding of the issues to be examined. Now we are getting into slight more detail. Okay, like in any sentence, a sentence has a topic and a point. Think about it. The sky is blue. In English grammar, they will say this is the subject and this is the predicate. What is the subject? The sky. What is the predicate? The blue. Okay, so if I have to say in our terms, then the topic is the sky. The author wants to talk about sky, not about ocean, not about politics, not about economics, sky. And what is it about the topic he wants to talk about? He will talk about the blueness of the sky. Okay, he will not probably talk about the color or the other factors of the highness of the sky or the darkness of the sky. No, he'll probably talk about the blueness of the sky. Maybe he will not talk about the changing color. So like a simple sentence tells you the topic and the point. This third thing that you're seeing on your slide is your understanding of the issues to be examined are those points that you want to get into within the broad field that you've chosen. Okay, then it should also be shaped to the extent to which the focus of your study is predetermined. Simplistically said, a lot of the research work is a continuation of other people's work. So some part of the knowledge is already gathered. If we are silly enough to not read literature of what is already available, we might end up spending 5 years and then realizing, oops, we have rediscovered the wheel. That's not the right place to be. So you should know what is already done or known and then take it up from there. Okay, that is also an integral part of trying to find out what is the research gap and where is it that I can put in my 2 pence. Okay, so why is it so important to formulate the problem properly? Needless to say, we'll go very quickly on this. It is like deciding on a destination before you're undertaking a journey. This is something you must have heard over and over again. If not, it'll sound exciting to you. If not, it'll be blasé. But I will still go through this because this is the ABC of formulating the research problem. It's like undertaking a journey and trying to decide where you want to go. In the absence of a destination, it is impossible to identify the shortest route, let alone any route for that matter. Similarly, in the absence of a clear research problem, a clear and economical plan is impossible. So you need to, in a way, try to look at, if not the end game, okay, advanced stages of your work. Try to conceive where it will be at the very beginning, at the inception point, when you're trying to decide what you'll work on. Okay? To use another analogy, the research problem is like the foundation of a building. Well, this will appeal more to the architects. Okay? The type and the design of the building, the orientation, the configuration, what have you, are dependent on the foundation, structurally stable. If the foundation is well designed and strong, you can expect the building to also be robust. The research problem similarly serves as the foundation of a research study. If it is well formulated, you can expect a good study to follow. Remember, this is the first and the most crucial step of your 7-8 step journey, whatever you call it. The quality and the relevance, this is an important word, the quality and the relevance of your research. Will this research be of any good to anyone, to society, to the profession? That is the relevance. Okay, the quality and the relevance of your research efforts will entirely depend on this particular step, which is formulating the research problem. Many a time it is getting clarity, okay, and distinctiveness in the research problem that is a problem. Okay, sometimes we are going around in circles, we are asking many questions, but we are not sure of exactly what is it that we are setting out to find out. Yeah. So a research problem may take a number of forms. It can be very simple. It can also go to the very complex. The way that you formulate a problem, and I've said this, and this is just formally saying it out, that the way that you formulate the problem, the way you play your first over, if it were, or your first bout, will determine every step that will follow. Okay? How well it is done, every step you follow will have an impact. The type of the study that can be used. Okay? So the way that you decide your problem will decide the type of study design that you can use. It will decide the type of sampling strategy that you will employ. It will decide the research instrument that you can develop. It will decide the type of analysis that you can undertake. It will decide the way the report will be written and the way it will be presented. So this is key. It is like the input to a study, formulating the research problem. The quality of contents of the report, the validity of the associations, the causation and everything, that is the output. Okay, this is the input. And of course, the entire output is entirely dependent on the inputs you give. Remember, garbage in, garbage out. If you put in garbage into what you're trying to do, no matter how much you do, you will just make more and more garbage. So take your time, think it through with care at the stage that you're actually formulating your research problem. Also, remember that confusion is but a first step towards clarity. It is good to be confused. If you know too much, very deterministically, this is what I want to do. My professor has said that he or she has done some research, some PhD. There are some further questions or future research which she has noted down, 1, 2, 3, 4. I am going to do 4. Okay? That is clarity. I'm not saying that that is creative or undoable, but that is clarity. Very, very often, most of the time, there will not be clarity. There will be confusion. But if you put your mind to it, okay, and if you calm your mind, like they say, okay, you will be able to see through it and you will be more perspicacious, more wise in being able to formulate the research problem. The scope, how big is it? How much is that I can do? How small is it? How trivial is it? How relevant is it? All these are clearly distinct words I have used. How relevant, how big, how time taking, okay? How resource intensive? Do I need money to do it? Okay. What kind of skill I need? All of these will be there playing around in your mind. So confusion is normal, not to be disheartened by that. But if you identify the parameters of your so-called confusion, the chances are that you'll move towards clarity. So we'll give you a simple example. That's how I thought it would be best understood instead of talking about these theoretically. And simple example. And truly, I will talk about two examples in the next few minutes. Both of them I've taken from social sciences. They are neither architecture nor planning really. They are actually to do with sociology maybe, but they are social science. And why it is important is many a time you are trying to assess or quantify, okay, phenomena which are subjective. How do people feel? Okay. Like Anna Marie said in the non-scientific method, intuition, belief, and all that. Okay. That is informal knowledge, but we can still formalize it and try to get subjective phenomena which can be more objectively assessed or objectively determined or objectively projected or guessed for. So I take two examples from sociology because everyone will be aware of these kinds of problems and how to go about this. So suppose your broad area of interest is depression. Okay. Further, suppose you want to conduct a research study regarding services available to patients with depression living in a community. Now see, from the first to the second one, it is already, okay, gone into one depth, one layer of depth. From the broad area, it has been able to come down to or converge to one particular specific objective is to try to find out about services which are available to patients with depression. Okay, that is the step. Each one of them, of course, will have gaps that we'll talk about later. Now, can we go into one more layer of depth? If your focus is to find out the types of service, now we are already gone into services available to patients. Okay, services available to patients, right? If your focus is to find the types of service available, the study will dominantly be descriptive and qualitative in nature. Appreciate what we are saying. It's a simple example. However, on the other hand, if you want to find out not the type of service, but the extent of use of these services, how much are these services being used by people? Okay, what is the number of people using them? It will dominantly then be quantitative methodology. So what is the specific questions that you are asking within the subtopic are varying. I'm giving you an example of that. Depression, broad area. Okay. Services available to depression patients, sub area. And how did we jump to that? We must have actually listed out and dissected the broad area of depression. We'll come to that sometime. Okay. And then said that, okay, no, this is what I want to do. Maybe you found the gap there. Okay. Just give me a minute. I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I'm back. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Folks? Yeah, okay. So again, now we've gone into one level more of depth within the type of service, the services. One is trying to find out types of services, which will be descriptive. The other one is trying to find out how much people use this. Third one may be, if your aim is to find out the effectiveness of these services. Let's say many people are using it or not using it, but how effective is it for those who are using it? In that case also, the study will be correlational. And the study design that is used, the methods of the collecting data and everything else, the analysis will all be on the quantitative. Okay, so the last three bullets are telling you three different research issues or questions which we are asking about the same sub area, which is services available to depression patients, which is only one of the sub areas of the broader area of research, which is depression. So this is how you are going slowly from breadth knowledge into depth knowledge. Hence, it is important for you to understand that the way you formulate a research problem actually determines all the subsequent steps that you have to follow during your research journey. I'll spend a little time on the possible the sources of research problems. What do I begin with? What do I work on? And all of that. You people are faculty members and you people are relatively better read than the average Samaritan. So you would know a lot of possible sources, but we will try to categorize them from a research point of view. Most research, especially social sciences research, revolve around 4 P's. Okay, people, problems, programs, phenomena. Okay, this is obvious. You are either trying to find out about people, about problems, about programs, about phenomena, and you can be trying to do a combination of all this. Okay, most research involves a combination of these fields. The first P, people, provide you the study population, which we'll talk about as the universe and sample and all of that. The other 3 will provide you the subject area. You may select a group of individuals. Okay, it may be group A versus group B. It may be men versus women. Okay, it may be senior citizens versus juveniles, what have you. Groups of individuals to examine the existence of, say, certain issues in their lives. Okay, a problem that they have. And remember, I'm giving you social science examples, but this is applicable to planning. This is applicable to architecture, to urban design, to construction management, all of the fields that we are essentially interested in. Okay, so you're trying to examine the existence of certain issues in their lives, which is the problem. Okay, to establish the existence of a social pattern, maybe that is the phenomena. Okay, or to evaluate the effectiveness of an intervention like we were talking about for depression, which is the program. Okay, so it's a combination of these things. It's not that you have to straddle all. Okay, you maybe as you're determined or your predetermined thing saying that these 3 aspects have been handled, this is the one aspect that I want to differentiate. I want to find out what people have found out about this phenomena, that phenomena. I will find out about some other phenomena. Okay, right? Your focus may also be on the study, to study an association or a phenomena per se, that is the relationship between employment and street crime. It's correlational. If they are not employed, maybe they are more they have more propensity to do street crime. Okay, they are more prone to doing street crime. That is a hypothesis. It is a guess. It's not a wild guess. It's a structured guess, but we need more structure to the inquiry to be able to find out, is there a correlation to employment and street crime? And if there is it directly proportional, indirectly proportional? What is the degree of the correlation and stuff like that? Similarly for smoking and cancer. If you smoke, you might get cancer. Okay, so these are sorts of things that you have to find out for correlations. In technical fields, in engineering, planning, you could research on materials, you could research on instruments, you could research on other processes, etc., etc. So there are various sources that are around, and you need to look out for what actually interests you. And The same thing really said in a different way by another author. What are the considerations in selecting research problems? Well, the following considerations will ensure that your study is manageable and that you remain motivated. Two very important things. Can I manage? Okay. Am I feeling up to it? Am I motivated? Are the two important issues. One is self-interest. Maybe that is the research that you will do most of your life. If you are into teaching, the chances are that you will be associated directly or indirectly with research. Are you motivated? Are you passionate enough? Do you have the self-interest in that field? You should also consider the magnitude of the scope. How big is it? How extended will I do the scope? Because that will depend on my resource limitations, time, money, effort, expertise, and all of that. Then it will depend on the measurement of concepts. What are the indicators? What are the variables? There are dependent and independent variables. All that will be talked about in the following days. I won't get there. But all of these have to be considered when you are formulating your research problem. What is the level of expertise that I have? My attitude, my skill, my knowledge. Add to that my attitude to learning something that I completely not know. Okay, I decide I am ambitious and I jump into the deep end of the pool without learning to swim, with the strategy that if I survive, I will not die, and I will learn. Okay, there may be strategy. You may take the soft option, you may take the hard option, you may take a complicated route, you may take a straightforward route, but all of this you have to consider when you are at the phase one. What is the relevance of the study? Very, very important. What is the relevance to society? What is the relevance to academics, to the profession per se? And what is the data availability? Secondary sources data, primary source data will depend on what is not available in the secondary data. What is the cost of the data available if it is to be bought from somewhere? Okay, all of these. And finally, very importantly, I'm sure on the final day, okay, Banerjee sir will talk to you about a very, very important soft aspect of research, that is ethical issues. While conducting the survey, being immaculate and over enthusiastic, are we asking sensitive questions to people? No. By asking the questions, I ask them, can it have any adverse effects on their mind or any other processes that they follow? Those are the ethical issues that you also have to consider. All of this, just remember, these ethical issues may be talking about the end game, the impact of after the research is done and dusted. But still, that is something that we have to consider at this stage. So we consider all these issues carefully before you finalize your research problem. Discussions with supervisors, experts, peer groups will be helpful. Needless to say, literature study is a must. So now we will, like the cyclical process in the overall research method, okay, we will now just concentrate on phase one, that is finding a research problem and formulating a research problem, and also go deeper and break it down, chop, analyze, and see what are the stages by which we formulate the problem. That, I think, should be the culmination of this particular session. So the first steps you take are like baby steps. So you consider these following steps. Identify what the broad field that interests you. Then dissect into small parts. Dissect the broad area into sub areas. Okay, this is the convergence. And all through this, I do not need to repeat this again and again. We have to find gaps. And unless we know what is already there, we cannot find out gaps. Gaps can't be seen. It's like the figure and ground. Unless you have the figure, you don't have the ground, or vice versa. So at every point, try to reflect. All of you are intellectual enough for that. Try to reflect You might already be doing research on something, or you may be trying to think of something to write on, or maybe you're trying to go to a particular seminar and they have a topic already there. You're thinking on those lines. So try to think of those ideas which are already there in your mind, those broad fields in your mind, and follow this process with me. Then you dissect it into broad areas or sub areas. Then you select which is the sub area, which is the most relevant, which is the one that I want to do. Then you raise questions. Let's say you raise a few research questions. Here also, we will have to think about finding gaps. We may have selected an area. Okay. Then what are the differentiated aspects of that? Okay. By this also, you will be able to find out a gap. You see the 4 or 5 aspects, you think about it in a holistic fashion and say, well, this is one aspect no one thought about. It could also be, think about this now. This is very important. Okay. The scale. Okay. Somebody has done it in a very small scale in a rural area. I will change the setting to an urban area. Okay. Someone has done it, but it is at a small level. At a small level, he is only identified and taken a sample of maybe 20. So I go and prove that 20 is not statistically testifiable. So I will take 200, okay, out of a population of maybe 2000, so that it's 10%, and I'll try to make it more statistically relevant and viable and all of that. Whatever it is, in each of these steps, okay, think of what has not been done. And for that, you have to study all that has been done to the best of your ability and to the best of your resources available. So you raise a few research questions, and then you use the scientific method. You formulate the research objectives. In a way, the raising questions and formulating the research objectives are the same thing. You're only transforming the research questions into research objectives. Broadly speaking, okay, the idea of a research question and the idea of a research objective is the same. It is just stated differently, and we'll see it by the example that will just follow. Okay, and after you formulated your research objectives, assess it. Look back at it. Assess your objectives with respect to feasibility and resources. Ye ho paega mere se? Will I be able to do this after all? Do I have the resources, the time, the money, the effort, the technical expertise? Is it feasible and all of that? Okay, so assess, and finally double check that your research is realistic and truthful. You started identifying something, you dissected it. At the 3rd stage, you were selecting something. And by the time you have come to your 7th stage, you may have gone, I won't say astray, but you may have diverged. Okay, you may have actually gone different ways. But the double check is to say that, is this exactly what I wanted to do? Okay, or well, I started off with something, this is what I want to do. But get that self-validation. That is what I mean by double check. Okay, so this one, if you work through these steps, it presupposes a reasonable level of knowledge, which means that if you have to go through this process, and again, we'll take another example, but it assumes that you have a certain level of knowledge in the subject area. And if you're working on methods, be it qualitative or quantitative, you have some level of knowledge in the methods that you will apply. Okay, and if you don't, the starting point is trying to develop those skills and those sets of knowledge. A brief review of relevant literature will definitely help in broadening this knowledge base. We've said again and again, start broad study, find gaps, and then go deeper into the study. And only then it becomes easier to dissect a subject area clearly and adequately. from step 1. This is phase 1, step 1, identify. Phase 1, step 2, dissect. Okay. So knowing the area helps. And okay, dissecting means that you see various aspects to that. That is where you have to start to do your literature study. And when you're selecting which one is it that I'll take, it again depends on the same consideration. Am I good with it? Am I motivated about this? Okay. And is there a gap? Do I find that work has been done on 4 other aspects, but this particular aspect has not been worked upon? That is a good justification. So from your identify to your select, you have to justify. And even after you select the most relevant sub area, when you're raising the questions, you're getting one layer deeper so that you are seeing the differentiated aspects of the same phenomena or idea. Okay, so I'll take a classic example of alcoholism that has been there with social scientists from almost at the time that they were formulating research ideas with the same step model, identify. So let's say you've identified alcoholism as the broad area. And I'm asking you to go through this in your mind with your interest area. You will definitely be able to do it. Okay, this is an oversimplified method, but it is a method that will help you think step by step and logically. Let's say you've identified alcoholism as the broad area. Next job, read. Literature review. And let's say I have dissected it into many possible aspects. It may be, what is the profile of the alcoholics? Okay, what are the causes of alcoholism? Okay, what is the process of becoming an alcoholic? Everyone who has alcohol doesn't become an alcoholic. Okay, what are the effects of alcoholism on family of the person? Okay, what are community attitudes towards alcoholism? What is the effectiveness of a treatment model? Aren't all of these 6 quite different from each other? They are. That is important. This dissection will come through studying various literature. And that various literature, it will be again told to you how to do literature, how to do search. There is a snowballing effect. Get one. I normally say start with textbooks if possible. Or start with books which have various chapters by many authors edited by different people, which means they have tried to take a more holistic view of the thing and they have picked the brains of multiple experts, not just ones. So those kinds of books. And after you're done with that, let's say you get a paper or a e-journal or something which deals with it or something, and go to the bibliography of that. Okay, try to find out which are the references used by that author, and that from that, any one of that, if you are able to lay your hands on, your bibliography will also help you try to dissect, because that author has used various sources and he has come up with his opinion. Okay, so that is what I will call the snowball effect. So I take the third one and I somehow try to find it, and I find the third article or the third research paper, and I lay my hands on it and I read it, and then I go to the bibliography of that. That will again lead me somewhere else. It's like a treasure hunt. And while you do this, like I always say, keep a diary all the time, through your good and your bad, to your happy times and sad. Okay, that diary will be there because you will be noting down the stuff that you have already gone through. And when I mean diary, I'm an old-fashioned person. It could be a Word document where you just cut paste all your links or what have you. You can do it digitally as well, no problem. The idea is to take notes. Okay, so after we dissect, okay, let's say we find a gap, or let's say we don't find a gap, we just find out which is the one that excites me out of these 4. Let's say I have selected the 4th one, which is effects of alcoholism in the family. Not I, but that is the classic example. So let's say you've taken the effects of alcoholism on the family. Maybe you said that everyone talks about alcoholic, that talks about what happens to the people around. It's possible that you did not find enough literature. Or maybe you found just one literature somewhere in Sweden like that, or somewhere else. Maybe you're saying that the social milieu is very different in my geography, so that is a gap. I'm going to do it here, whatever. Okay, but you have to select. And how do you select? Same considerations: your motivation, your knowledge, your skill set, what are the time available, the resource constraints, and all of that. From select, our next stage is raise a few questions, which means go one step down, and within effects of alcoholism, it badly affects the family, or the effect on the family is enormous. Okay, that is a generic subjective statement. Can we break it down? Can we break it down? Yes, we can. So let's say we've asked 3 questions here. We've raised questions. What impact has alcoholism on marital relations? That means, what is the impact on the spouse? Which is very different probably on how it affects the child. So how does it affect children's life? Third, what are the effects on the family's finances? Okay, and it may go on and on. Okay, but these are differentiated aspects. Okay, I always invoke René Descartes when he says, okay, for an argument to be logical, okay, there are 2 things that are required. Okay, your mind, that's the scientific temper. Things should be clear and distinct. I say this all the time, so it must be repetitive for some of you. Clear and distinct. Clear money, whatever has been said, does the person, does the audience understand what is being said? And if instead of 1, there are 2 or 3 points, are they distinct from each other? Often that is the cloud of confusion or the nebula of fuzziness that we have in our minds. That basically objective 1 and objective 2 are the same thing. Or I'm not being able to understand, but after I find out what it is, it will come to the same result. So that is also some consideration that you should have. Is it clear? Is it distinct from one another? 2 points, are they different? So here probably the spouse, the child, and the finances are distinct. Not to say they are not related, but they are different from each other. Yeah. So after you raise the questions comes the next point, where I am essentially arguing that the next step is similar. You are formulating your objectives. Okay. The 4th step, raise question, was research questions. Now the same research questions we will formulate into objectives. For me, it is more a matter of how you express it. So just go through it. The main objective of this research is to find out effects of alcoholism on the family. That means the main objective is nothing but a restatement of the selected 3rd stage of phase 1. And what are the specific objectives? 1, 2, 3. Each of those research questions has just been rephrased into interrogative sentences, question marks. Rather, my bad, it was question mark. From the interrogative, you are transforming into the affirmative. You are making statements out of it. So what happens? Take a look at 1. What impact has alcoholism on marital relations? As an objective, it will be to ascertain the impact of alcoholism on marital relations. Itself is a broad thing. Okay, the various aspects by which an alcoholic and the spouse will react with each other can be very different. The lady can be an alcoholic and the man can be a spouse, or vice versa. Okay, it can be an alcoholic in a long distance relationship. So many other aspects can come in. So you are free to get into layers and layers of depth of classification based on what your field is. and based on what is already available, right? And then try to find out, this is the area where little work is done, so this is where I will go in for. Yeah. See how the second one, the second research question was, how does it affect children's lives? It's just a restatement. 2 is to determine ways in which alcoholism affects different aspects of children's lives. Third one, to find out the effect of alcoholism. Why have I put them in red? Because they are all action words, they are verbs. So objectives are affirmative sentences transforming the research questions which are in the interrogative. And then when you assess, after, let's say you've come up with these 3 objectives, okay? You assess, boss, are 3 too many to handle? Or shall I take just 2 and 3 and not take 1? Or if I take 2, even 2 seems to be very large. Okay, shall I then skip 2 and take 3? 3 is simpler. Let's say 3 is simpler. So it is more easily found out what is the family's finances. But in what way am I going to find out? So even the method will start to come in here. Okay, you are assessing based on the methodology. That is my phase 2, my phase 3. I'm not getting there now. I'm just saying, when you formulate it, when you're cross-checking, just assess it once. Last 2 steps are to validate, to self-validate what you're doing. Okay, you reassess your objectives with respect to the work involved. How much work is involved? Is it doable? How much time is available to you? What are the financial resources? What is your technical expertise, or what is that you can't do? So you assess that, and then you do a double check. You do a double check at the end to say, boss, we started off here. Am I still interested in what it is turning out to be? Do I have the motivation to go ahead with this? Do I have adequate time and resources? Do I have the technical expertise? So you double check, assess, and double check can be clubbed as one, but this is how you parse out your question and you formulate your research problem. I know I hardly have time, and this is my bad habit to overshoot time. If you have to hard stop, you can, but all I'll do is I'll kind of breeze through, okay, what architects and architectural research has talked about. It is nothing different from what I have said now, is the point I'll try to make in probably the next 5 to 8 minutes. I'll try to finish as soon as I can. So architectural research, it's not different. It's just placed or said in a different way by some important authors. So I'll breeze through this very quickly. What is architectural research? Okay, so one way to say it, it is an action plan for getting from here to there. Okay, nothing unique about this, about architecture, but this is where architectural research methodology books have talked about it, and authors who have talked about architectural research in general, not so much planning, because planning is relatively more quantitative. Architectural is not so. He is trying to say that it is an action plan for getting from here to there. Okay, as early as 1964, more than 50 years ago, still holds good, by Kaplan. So what is the here? It is the investigator's research question. You are here now. I know this, but I do not know this. And what is the there? The knowledge that will be derived from your research. I know this, I do not know this, so I want to find that out, what I do not know. So where is it that I will finally reach? And in between the here and the there, he says that there are a set of steps and procedures that are pre-prescribed or may emerge as the research proceeds. Needless to say, architectural research is more fluid. It is not as structured, but it still has logical consistency. We'll go to another author, that's Snyder. 20 years later than again, Kaplan, he says, architectural research is a systematic inquiry directed towards the creation of knowledge. Very similar. Inquiry, and he says, inquiry must be systematic, methodical, logical. So you have to think how to categorize, how to analyze. What we did with our alcoholism example was just that. We dissected, we categorized, we selected. In social sciences, theories are not universal. This is something very, very important. They are relative. They are based on perception. We are dealing with people. Every person is unique, not just his finger prints, but everything, the way he or she thinks is unique. In social sciences, theories are not universal. In physics, theories are universal. Okay, gravity happens this way. For Earth, it is 9.8 XYZ units. Okay, our planning or architectural theories are not universal. This is something I thought I must say, so I included. Theories need not be grand. Knowledge can emerge in small packets. So even if you, okay, wading through a sea of knowledge, find out a little gap somewhere to say, this is what my primary contribution, my seminal unique contribution will be, even if it is a small iota, that works. Okay, research need not be grand. And like, again, I'll invoke another big guru of mine, R.N. Datta, and I've said this again, and I'll repeat, I was stuck big time with my research when I was finishing my PhD. Okay, for various reasons, it took much longer than it should have. Okay, the bells were ringing that if you do not finish by this time, you're gone. Okay, you will never become a doctor. Okay, that time, my professor said, Joydeep, are you going to get a Nobel Prize with your PhD? We were having coffee. He was my teacher and he was my colleague. I was stumped. I said, sir, awaz dichen. Sir, why are you pulling my leg? He said, no. It seems that you are stuck because you think you want to do something grand and you will get, this is the only research you will do, and you must get a PhD which will get a Pritzker or a Nobel. That's why you're stuck. So demythify your work is what he told me. That ye wala jo hai, limited resources, limited requirement, limited inquiry, finish it off. Okay, so that is something that I would also say in passing to you. Theories need not be grand. Research need not be megalomaniac. It can come in small packets as long as it's logical. And of course, all the other things like it should be relevant, X, Y, Z. What do we mean by system of inquiry? It is about the process. It is not the product. Okay, it's the process. What do we mean by strategy? There are two words, and then we'll go for a graphic. After all, we are thinking architecture. What do you mean by strategy? Strategy, and this is not about research. This is a Oxford definition. The skillful management and planning of anything is strategy. And what are tactics? It is one skillful move at a more detailed level, like a technique. Okay, if we see system of inquiry, school of thought, strategy, tactics as different things, then you must start with a bird's eye view. Okay, this is what Grote and Wang is saying. Bird's eye view, you start broad, then you converge. Think of the systems of inquiry, then get into the schools of thought if it is about something that is normative. By normative, it means that what is it that you're looking at? Okay. Example, let's say you want to research about hospitals. Okay. Okay. Hospital, I can test hospital by the design efficiency. Okay. I can test a hospital with respect to building economy, how inexpensively and optimally things were done. Whereas I can also research or examine a hospital from a conceptual point of view, like say empathy. So efficiency, economy, empathy. Now, economy seems to be very deterministic. Okay, something we have great control on as designers. Efficiency, yes, we attempt efficiency. Okay, trying to make sure that the circulation spaces are not more than 50% of the net built up area or whatever. Okay, but still it is partly subjective. And what about empathy? Okay, how elated or how relieved or how therapeutic or cathartic is the atmosphere, or how fine or relieved does the patient feel in spaces of the hospital. So that is a very subjective thing. Empathy. So those are things what I mean by schools of thought. Okay, so you slowly getting into it, then you get into your strategy of how you will do the research, and then you get into the even detailed tactics. So you start with a breadth study approach, and then you converge to a depth study after you seem to have found a research gap. Okay, I think we will end this here. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Or if I get 5 minutes, then I can just do 3 more slides. Yeah, it might just help. Okay, so sir, can I extend by 5 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, sir. Yes, sir, you can. Yes, sir. Sir?
Yeah.
Hello. Oh, hi. Yeah, sir.
The new life. New
I
lease
know
of life.
the screen was
So in the context of architecture, I mean, I don't think I have more knowledge or breadth knowledge about the various fields of work which are actually extant today. But I mean, just about 3 slides quickly to give you those ideas. I mean, maybe this is helpful for people who have not yet committed to a field of research or a strategy of research. It will help. It may be a little late in the day for them because they've already started on the research, but it doesn't mean that it will not benefit them if they have to redesign, revisit the entire formulation. So strategy is the overall research plan or structure of study. Grote and Wang, I'm actually continuing on that, says that there are different strategies, and he names 7 strategies. Okay, there are examples. I won't get into it. You may have the book anywhere. I'm sure you have the book in your libraries, or even a soft copy, which is free. You can get it. It could be a historical or an interpretive strategy. Your research could have a qualitative strategy. It could have a correlational strategy. It could have an experiment setup, experimental strategy. And as you see, I mean, each one, the examples given will give you enough idea of what he means. It could be a simulation or modeling strategy for your research. It could be logical argumentation. What do you mean by that? Shape grammar kind of thing. I'm seeing things in this way. Am I able to crack the geometry of it? Am I able to figure out a pattern language like Mr. Alexander, what have you, shape grammar? That is another. So it's actually analytical, yet visually analytical. And it could be a combined strategies of all these kinds. This is after Grote and Wang. And then he says, if these are the broad strategies, let's say, of your research method and design, then what are the tactics that you can use? What do you mean by tactics? Tactics are those specific techniques that you use. Tactics and strategy are used in warfare. Strategy is the overall plan. Tactics are those small moves. Should we do a guerrilla move? Should we start at 4 a.m. in the morning, or should we start at 2 a.m. in the morning? Those are little tactics. Should we go from northwest or should we go from southeast? Those are little tactics. So for us in research, data collection devices are tactics. The diagrams, the sketches, the photographs, the videos, sometimes you count like you do for OD surveys and all. Okay, the response formats, you have to design them, whether it's questionnaires, interviews. Sometimes it's just unobtrusive observation. You're observing, no one also knows you're observing. But what the hell are you observing? You should have that structure in your mind, the response. The documentation, the way you do archival treatment, okay, how you put it together, those are tactics. The analytical procedures that you do, okay, this can be, okay, let's say something, some phenomena can be measured. It can be measured by counting, let's say. By counting something, you have to operationalize your variables. Remember this, operationalize your variables. It will come at the right time when you're doing your design. Okay, but what are the analytical procedures? Already existing kya hai? Let's say, for example, my PhD work was on location theory. Okay, where should an organized retail outlet locate itself within a city so that it gets maximum footfall, okay, and maximum sale? Okay, I found out that there are 7 kinds of ways of doing location research. It could be gravity model based research. It could be network based. It could be so many other ways, 7 or 8 ways. So just by doing an overview of the analytical procedures, I was able to do up a paper with my guide. So that paper was like a descriptive and maybe explanatory, but essentially an overview. I am not trying to find out anything else. I am trying to find out over the years, what are the various ways in which analysis has been done to locate a facility. So analytical, these are tactics. Urban, okay, mapping, you can say urban cognitive mapping. It is also a tactic. And finally, if you are measuring, the chances are you are counting in some way or the other, or you're observing. You observe physical traces, you observe human behavior in settings and all that. So sometimes you are observing, but most of the time you're also in a way counting. Okay, so where to start while deciding the broad area, and this is where I'll end for sure. Start from the evolution of architectural research over the years. Just from a history of architectural research, I'll just skim through it. Why I'm saying this? Because I thought when you're trying to find out what to research on, find a gap, maybe these will help. Okay. So architectural research has straddled both theory and practice. Understand this. The broad focus of such research has kept on shifting over the years. This is my last slide. Initially, they were, and this I would say is about 350 years old or so, when the problem solving method has come into being post the Renaissance. Okay, form-based structural studies were the flavor of the season at that time, architecturally, not talking planning. Building material studies came after that. Thus came construction technique studies. Okay, and all of this is relevant now. Okay, the contexts are still the same. The parameters, the players may have become different. Then we had climatological study. Then very, very broad, important one, environment behavior studies. Okay, how do people behave with environment? We shape our environment, and then the environment shapes us back, right? So this environment behavior studies, very, very, very many beautiful journals, environment behavior, A, B, C, D, E. Just read through the content page of any journal of environment and behavior, any issue, okay, you will find lots of ideas. Then there were design method and evaluation studies. Okay, post-occupancy, how happy are you with a certain set of housing, XYZ and all. Then there were construction management studies, which actually were about this. We are into the 1970s or 80s already, when construction management has been acknowledged as a separate field of research, not just an additional service given by an architect. From that time, we are trying to look at, network compression. We are trying to look at increasing the productivity. We are trying to look at risk management and stuff like that. Those are the things which are more recent. urban planning and design studies. It's so broad, I won't get into it at all. Critical regionalism studies, postmodern theory. Those are how research has gone on for the few fields. And then, of course, the flavor of the season is energy conservation studies and what we call today sustainability studies. So these are broad fields. And if you take the broad field, identify there are very many subfields of those, and then select that which interests you, raise a few questions. Fourth step, raise a few questions which are research questions, transform them into research objectives, then assess and double check, am I good to go? That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I think it was very extensive, and it actually gave us quite a valuable insight into what has to be done and how we have to keep on changing from one phase to another and how it is all linked together. Thank you so much, Joydeep sir.
My pleasure.
The platform is open for questions.
Sure.
So if anybody has any question, please show a raise of hand so that we can proceed further with the question.
I think it's unfair on them because I took more time than was allotted to me.
So
Yes, we can see somebody putting up a question in the chat box. It would be better if you could
It's not a
verbally
question,
speak out.
but Harini says that it was a fantastic session. Thank you for your kind words. Thanks me and thanks the organizers. Thank you, Harini. Any questions? Of course, I mean, yes, you will get another chance to hit out at me. That will be day after tomorrow, I think, in the morning, when we'll be talking about sampling design. And I can sample some of your questions at that time, if you have any.
So we don't have any questions from the participants.
Pravash is there. So we have one. Pravash.
Yes, Pravash.
Yes, Pravash.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, unmute and shoot.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon.
Sir, actually, I have a what to say. I understood the research gap thing, but I have a doubt regarding that. Sometimes there may or might not be a clear or well-defined gap in the literature what we have research. So this might occur due to lot of conflicting or incomplete information. So on the topic.
Okay.
So
what's
if
your
this situation arises, what is the first step to counter or fill the gap?
So you're saying at times you read a lot and still you're not being able to find a gap, right?
Yes, sir. That situation.
In that case, what do you do? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's a very philosophical question, short question, long answer. I won't go long. All I'm saying is try to think of it this way. Okay. Transform, abstract. Think of your basic design. I would assume all of them are architects here or architecture students. Abstraction, do you remember in basic design, we would abstract something or transform something? Let's say we use that strategy, Prabhash,
Yes.
that I'm not being able to find the gap. Okay, work has been done. Okay, I will again go to my own example of my PhD research. Okay, location theory and where should they locate? Where should shops locate? Now I found that there is a lot of research for formal sector. Think about it. Formal sector, mane the Reliances and the Tata, the Chromes and all of that. There's a lot of research on how to do this. Informal sector does not have it. So what did I do? I have transformed the setting from formal to informal. And then I start to find out informal shop ka, do we have some work on location? I found, yes, I found 2 or 3 in Europe, and actually all 3 of them were from Amsterdam. Okay, they were from Netherlands. Then what do I do? End of my research? No, I said, wait, some of the perceptions and the parameters must be different in India. So it has been done there, but it is not done here. So I will do it here.
It's not relevant here.
Okay, so what did I do? I transformed the setting again. I can change or transform the scope of the work. Okay, it has been done for these kind of people, but has not been done for that kind of people. Or it can be that this phenomena has been examined by 10 people, but they have used 6 types of methods. My method is a different method. So no one has tried this method. This is a new method. So I am applying it there. So all I'm trying to do is, in some way or the other, by scope or by setting, okay, or by changing one parameter of the population. You again think of that. PPPP. You are trying to find out about people, about problems in their life, what programs there are, and what are the phenomena. Just tweak any one of them and say that this will be different from this, and this work has not been done. That's how you can create gaps.
Yes, yes, sir.
Is how I would respond.
Yes, sir. So there is another question that's kind of a inquiry. If there is no kind of no source or data available on something.
Hey, I'm sorry, I missed. Please repeat.
Yes, sir. If there is no source or verified data available for a certain topic, which is better
Just
to
1 minute. Okay, can you hear me now? Hello,
Yes,
check.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is from the other device. Okay, yeah, tell me.
Okay, so if there is no verified data available for a certain topic,
If I'm sorry.
there is no verified data
Hmm.
available for a certain topic. Maybe it's in research, maybe the planning we're doing now. So which is better, the following the sampling method, or using data from unverified sources? Which is more unbiased?
I mean, the example you're giving is actually between the devil and the deep sea. So whichever is the lesser of the evil is that you take. Or there's a lot of time that data is not available, but then that is a good justification for saying that we need to do primary survey. That data is not there. Or sometimes it is, okay, data is there, but it is not verified data. My research can simply be that I want to verify the data. Or I will give you another example. I'll give you another very good example of something that I'm thinking myself itself about. It's also related to your earlier question. I mean, maybe I said that this is a method, okay, of a shop or a store knowing where it wants to locate. But this is work done 12 years ago. Okay, have things changed now? Honestly, they have.
Yes.
Now there's so much e-tailing coming in. When I finished my research 15 years back, okay, e-tailing was, or internet buying and all that was very rudimentary. Now it is rampant, right? So
Yes.
the entire concept or the paradigm has shifted. So sometimes if you have unverified data, but you have data, you can just verify a sample if it is verifiable. If it is data from 10 years back, you cannot verify it today maybe.
Yes, sir.
But if it is about something architectural which has not changed over 10 years, it's that earlier also people were allowed to come into a precinct which is a heritage precinct. Okay, Bada Imam Bada, after 10 years also they are being allowed to come inside, but still things may have changed because the facilities may have changed, this may have changed, and thus the perception may have changed.
Yes, sir.
So I'm saying that if you have any kind of a data gap, and I should say that the chances are that you will find no data, okay, especially if it is quantitative, and you know this data is incomplete, even if you get it. If you're lucky that it is complete, it may be unreliable. If you're still lucky that it is reliable, well, it may be inconsistent. Okay, so many things are there. The chances are that you will have to make some assumptions about the data, or you have to go for some kind of primary data survey. Now, when you're doing it as a team, as part of a studio exercise, which is 2 months as the scope, then that goes beyond the scope of that. Then we say, this is what is available, this is not what available. So we just say that, okay, these are the things that are not available, and maybe this is what should be done, okay, going forward. However, if it is a PhD work, then you might decide that, okay, this is what is the data that I need to collect. And the chances are that you will have to collect your data and then do your analysis, which actually is actually a feather up, because it shows that you have done things from scratch.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, yes, anybody else?
Anyone else?
Okay.
So I think the question, we are done with the questions. Is there anyone else? Amir. Amir is there.
Yes, Amir.
Yes, Amir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hi.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, sir. So I'm Amir from FOP, and I would like to congratulate you first for the splendid session
Thank
and
you.
for very explicitly putting everything that a researcher need to start with. And now I'm putting up my question. So I would like to bring back the example of the cat that died, for which the observation is being made. So I am doing like I have proposed the LCA study where I am doing like a quantitative study. Exactly. So what if my source of observation, or the source from where I am collecting the information, like I couldn't get more information from that?
Okay. Okay. So there is a limitation to the data that is available to you, you're saying. Okay. About the cat dying, all that she said was that she was trying to say that, is it replicable? That means, can other people do it? And then she also said that, is it independent, in the sense that, okay, anybody else can do it, that researcher need not be there. And so it can happen that there is a limitation of the data, that I have got data till here, beyond that I don't have. So a lot of those things will actually come into your assumptions when you are setting your research design. Okay, and what you say is your assumption, if it is a logically consistent assumption, then I think it is acceptable. Okay, it is not your fault for some reason if a trail of information which is coming, which I believe for you needs to be real time, in the sense that it's a life cycle analysis. If it stops at some point in time, you can say that the data is limited to this. So the two things, of course, we do not have ideal case studies or situations where everything is hunky-dory and everything is falling into that cycle or that straight line or whatever. It's never that way. So there are two places which actually give you a chance to work on it. One is when you are, after your research has been formulated, when you're doing the research design, you say that these are the assumptions and these are the limitation. This is there in my scope, this is not there in my scope, so it's a limitation of the study. That you can do. And the second place is, after you've done your analysis and inferences and findings, sometimes even done your recommendations, the last, at the end, especially for PhD work, normally the last chapter is about discussion, okay, limitations, and further research. So you can definitely say that, well, okay, this material we got from stage 1 to stage 6. After that, we did not get that material, but we know that there is a stage 7, 8, 9. So further study should be done where from 1 to 9 will be done. So as long as you say that, this is what I could not do, and it is logical, I mean, that is acceptable in research. That's my limited, I mean, we can engage with your specific problem when we meet in person at some point in time, but that's my cursory observation to your answer.
Can I add a more bit, sir?
Yes, please, Amit.
Because I'm doing a LCA study, I couldn't rely on the primary data because I couldn't do a primary observations.
So make it experimental now.
Experimental.
What material are you doing LCA for?
So I am doing the building envelope materials, building envelope.
Ah, okay. So is it possible to set up an experiment where you can get swatches of those, I mean, envelope or facade or something, and
Yes, sir.
have it put up somewhere? I know I mean,
Yes.
I'm talking of something ambitious.
Yes.
Whether that can be done or not, that is one way to do it experimental. The second best way is that I could not do the real thing, but I am trying to simulate something. So you can do some modeling. At
Yes,
the
sir.
end of the day, I'm sure it is about climate and how it affects the inside and outside, right? So
Yes, sir.
you can do some simulation.
Simulation will come.
Before, that is a possibility. And
Yes, sir.
and yes, I mean, all the data that you will have is primary data. But then, I mean, if you, I mean, of course, it's very difficult to see weathering of data, like say weathering of say materials in a year or two. But I mean, if you again can simulate conditions of sun, rain, heat, cold, and all of that, maybe something can be done. Maybe digitally. I'm not too sure of this.
Actually, sir, I will be
Not an expert in this field.
Yes, sir. I will be predominantly relying on the inventories and the EPDs that are available by the manufacturers for the embodied energy. And I just doubt that I do not stuck in a situationship like the sources discontinued.
Amir, if you are taking, formally taking, data which is given by the manufacturer,
Yes,
then
sir.
I think it is quite fine for you to say that we assume that the data given by the manufacturer is realistic and reliable. You can safely assume.
Okay. That will come in my assumptions part.
Yes. Yes. I can start off with a set of assumptions or caveat saying, ye mere se nahi hoga, I will not be able to do. And after doing the whole thing again, you can go and say that I may have set out to do this, but I achieved only 3. I were not able to achieve those 2. Those 2 are for future discussion or for future research. Or you could say, while doing the research, we ran into this problem where, this and that are inversely correlated, or some new finding has come out which is in a way inconsistent with the original assumption. So you have your opportunities. You have your opportunities of trying to say that this is what I could not do, what we call limitations, both at the beginning, which will be called assumptions, and at the end, which will be called limitations and further research. Okay. That is a very acceptable thing to be done.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure.
So,
thank you. Yeah.
Your presentation on finding research gaps, and if I can sum it up in a brief gist, types of research, application, objects, inquiry, how the qualitative and the quantitative inquiries, and how you have categorically broken down it into phases, and the final categories of identifying, dissecting, selecting, raising, and finally formulating the research gap was quite informative and thought-provoking also, and it led us to systematically proceeding towards our research journey. We appreciate the effort and the time that you have put into preparing for this session and taking the time to be with us today. Thank you once again.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Also, a big round of thanks to all the participants for joining us on this insightful and informative day one of FDP. We hope that you have gained valuable knowledge and insights from our esteemed speakers. We would like to remind you to join us on time on day two, that is tomorrow, so that we can have more sessions of interaction as have been planned and panned out. Please again remember the attendance is mandatory, and thank you so much for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take your leave.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.